Yeah, I think we are
Yep.
recording now.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, welcome guys to this conversation. My name is Tongai Chichaya. I'm an assistant professor in occupational therapy. And we're going to be having a conversation here with my colleague. And I'll allow you to introduce yourself, Gary.
Hi everyone. My name is Gary Wong. I'm also an assistant professor in occupational therapy, and I'm teaching a module about occupational science with Tongai. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff. So we were teaching this module together, and we
Mm,
thought as part of you know creating resources for teaching and learning, we'll have a conversation about occupational science, occupational therapy, which can then be used as a resource, mainly focusing on international perspectives in occupational therapy.
mm,
So, as we all know, um, occupational science, occupational therapy, its foundations are mainly based in the Western world, and it's made typically the profession was founded by uh, white, female, middle class people in the Western world. But Gary, me and you, we don't seem to perfectly fit into that demographic.
yeah.
But at the same time, we're having a conversation about occupational science, the discipline that we enjoy,
Yeah.
occupational therapy, the profession that we so love. So, in terms of looking at international perspectives, I would like you to bring in, you can share with us, the background in terms of where you're coming from and in terms of the culture and in terms of
Mm.
how occupational science is understood in your context.
Yeah. I'm happy to share with my own experience as well because um, before I go for my own personal experience, let people know that my background. So I get my occupational therapy degree in Hong Kong, which is my home cities, and Hong Kong is a really diverse city that we borrow both idea from the traditional Chinese culture and also we bridge them with the Western culture. So it's like a mix in my hometown, Hong Kong. And when I first time learning the occupational therapy, learning about those concepts is a little bit challenge because we bearing the similar like traditional Chinese culture, but at the same time we're learning like a new language, not just about the English, but even within the terminology within the occupational science, we come across lots of challenge about understanding some concept which is very different from what we believe from our traditional. So like let's talk about like the first idea about the health and well-beings because in Chinese culture we have a very different understand very different theory about health and well-being. In Western culture, we learn about disease, disorder, maybe caused by bacteria, pathogens, things like that. But in Chinese, especially when we talk about the Chinese traditional medicines, we believe that the ill health or the well-being is the result of the balance between within the harmony within your body system and also it's about the harmony between the person and the surrounding. We always talk about the harmony and then we have a really specific I would say it's categorizations way. We always consider things in like a five category. What we call the five element theory. We believe that this kind of theory, like we talk about metal, wood, water, fire, earth. We categorize everything with this kind of five elements. We put our organs, body system into this five element system. From my own personal experience, I don't know why a particular system will belong to that particular element, but just like that, there's like a symbolic rather than the literal meaning of that elements. And also because all these five elements represent certain meanings, certain cultural value with that. Like for example, when we talk about the wood element, it refers to something representing growth or with vitalities. Or when we talk about fire elements, we referring to something like a symbolism of energies, transformation, aggression, something like that. So we not just categorize the body system, but we also categorize sometimes behavior that people engage in different activities may belongs to different element. And we are thinking about the health, well-being related to this kind of balance between your participation in different activity, what you do, what you eat, what you intake, what your output is. So that kind of system is like a very different system comparing with what we learned from the traditional Western concept of well-being and illnesses. I think this is one of the big challenge. But like I said, in Hong Kong, we also mainly learn from the Western perspective. So this is a little bit challenge at the very beginning. Yeah.
So we're taking it that, occupational therapy, occupational science has been predominantly developed in the Western world, and then the other parts of the world are now, taking the discipline, taking the profession, and then learning based on what is presented. I do get an important point there about language. Can you talk a little bit around that in terms of,
Yeah.
the words that are used in occupational, occupational science, we tend to use common words, but then we give them our own meanings, which I think
Yeah.
sometimes makes it very difficult for the general public to have an understanding of what we do. Not only the
Yeah.
general public, even
Yeah.
the multidisciplinary team members. Yeah.
We struggle a lot in Hong Kong or even within the Chinese community. So we have so many different types of Chinese. We have different ethnicity group within the Chinese community. So we have Chinese from Hong Kong, we have Chinese from Taiwan, we have Chinese from mainland China. We also have some Chinese that may developing around the Southeast Asia. So we have so many different types of Chinese, and then somehow we share some of the Chinese character, but it doesn't mean that we share everything. So
Mhm.
like the first thing we struggle a lot is about the definition of occupational therapy. How can we call ourselves? Because like in Hong Kong, we have a translation of occupational therapy very different from what we see in Taiwan or China's. So we in Hong Kong we just borrow the idea like from the Western country that occupation may be related to employment, pay job, something. So we choose a vocabulary that means work, occupation like pay job. So people keep asking us, are you just working for people who get injured at workplace? But like from Taiwan, Chinese, they more focus on the functional aspect of the occupational therapy. They focus more about the functioning, helping people to do things to get better. And then in mainland China, they have another focus. They have a different perspective about the different focus about the occupation. So even with these three district, we struggle a lot about having a consistent understanding about occupational therapy. This is one thing, and also there are many other concepts that we find it confusing. Like one of the example, like when I teaching with Tongai with and then another colleague, we talk about some struggle when we talk about one of the occupational concept when we talk about form, function, meaning. It happens to me like struggle a little bit between the concept about meaning and function, because eventually I find out that because for Chinese, sometimes we use the same translation for purpose and meanings. So same Chinese translation for purpose and meaning, they confuse a little bit that for some of our Hong students from Hong Kong, they struggle a lot about how to differentiate what is the difference when we talk about the function of the occupation or the meaning of the occupation, because in Chinese they are using the same translation. So we do a come. This is just one of the example, but we still very difficult because that kind of terminology is not originate from our own language. This is the main challenge, and then we try to grasp the best translation from the Western world. So this is really struggling at the very beginning. But like I think in Hong Kong is the best opportunity for us to get a different perspective, because this is that Hong Kong is a really complex and diverse city that we can borrow different ideas
Yeah.
around the Asia. Yeah.
That's interesting. So still in your in the context in Hong Kong and the Chinese, perspective, occupation is still linked to defining it along the lines of work. Yeah.
Yeah, it is mainly for like general people. They still related it to work, pay job.
Mhm.
But in clinical practice, we make it more diverse. We borrow the idea about activities. We borrow
Mhm.
the idea like any kind of business, anything that about people doing things. We associate with like we would still associate with self-care work, leisure. We have similar categorization about occupation in Hong Kong when we practice. But for general public, they just always wonder whether we're just working for people who get injured at work.
Yeah.
We still need to be more popular about this. We try to promote this idea, but yeah,
So are there
working on
are
it.
there like terms that you think they align better when you are defining occupation in your context? Do you use one word, or is a combination of words with phrases?
We do have some good expertise or some senior therapists in Hong Kong. They will suggest another translation. Like we use another terms. If you don't mind, I would like to show on the screen that yeah, let me show on the screen. So one of my colleagues that's senior, she's really a pioneer in our profession in Hong Kong. So she suggested that instead of occupation related to like paid job or employment, we use this Chinese. One of the trouble with Chinese is Chinese with lots of character, and character makes up works. Works and character is something very different. So, but we borrow this character from the traditional Chinese, and then you can see the pictures, like the very old version of this character is look like is someone with a hand holding something to imply the doing things. So this character means doing things, or the things that they do, that people do. But in nowadays, this character also represent lots of other things, like we related to like business. Anyone would do business, or when we talk about any kind of like public issue or any kind of social issue, we also use that characters. And when we also sometimes it can be a verb, sometimes it can be a noun to us. So but this is like the suggested better translation of occupation, comparing with paid job or employed work. Yeah. So this is something suggested by our senior pioneer OT in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Wow. That's very interesting, and thanks for sharing that. So, I mean, I think I can jump in there to talk a little bit about, perspectives from my cultural background.
Yeah.
Before we then maybe wrap this conversation by looking at, the implications for practice and for knowledge generation in occupational science. So I am originally from Zimbabwe. That's where I was born. I grew up. I studied my occupational therapy at the University of Zimbabwe some many years ago. So similar to your situation, so the word occupation, in my language, Shona, we don't have like a single word that clearly captures the essence of occupation in terms of how we define occupation in occupational science and occupational therapy. There is another word that can be used, but it sounds like works or jobs. But then in our context, when we say work or jobs, it's not necessarily paid employment. We also have, to a great extent, if you want to articulate occupation, you would use a phrase, yeah? Not just one word, but it's actually a phrase that sort of like captures, the essence of what you're talking about, So definitely there's an issue there. When occupational therapy came to Africa, it came to a great extent during the colonial times. So it was, to a great extent, it was a situation where the people who are coming with occupational therapy, they are maybe spouses of people who are working in the army, from the different, from a different context, from the West, the colonizers, so to speak, in that context. So it then came with a foreign like tag attached to it, So even when your grandparents ask you what you're doing, and then you say occupational therapy, they'll say, "Are you a doctor?" Then you say, "No." "Are you a pharmacist?" "No." "Are you a nurse?" "No." "Then what are you?"
Yeah, same here.
So it's about explaining that, no, what we do, we're looking at, the things that we do in our life, day-to-day life, things that we do.
Yeah.
And then those things are meaningful to us. When you have a conversation along those lines, then it starts to make sense to the general public. So the issue of language is one thing that is very important. The other bit also is that, in my cultural perspective, you were talking about the issues of wood, metal, and things like that. Our culture is very much relational. You might have heard about the concept of unu or ubuntu. In my language,
Mm.
Shona, we say unu. In Zulu or Ndebele, they say ubuntu. So this is a relational sort of like perspective that, for me to be who I am, it's because of other people,
Mm.
So that connection, it's very important in terms of our culture. So when we think in terms of occupational science, in the original text, they were very much focusing on an individual, how an individual does things and things like that. So that sometimes brought a conflict when you're learning, that there's a contradiction, there's a dissonance between what you're learning and what you're living. I remember when I was reading occupational therapy textbooks, reading that, when a child is eating with their fingers and they're not using a spoon, it's sort of like pathological. It
Mm.
didn't make sense to me because we eat with our hands, with our fingers. I was like, what's not normal about this? So that's the thing with knowledge. When knowledge is being generated in one part of the world, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to apply to the other part of the world. So for us, the other thing is, like in Zimbabwe, each person, the indigenous Zimbabweans, you will have sort of like a totem. And usually this will be an animal, that you are aligned with in terms of your totem. So it brings in this relational thing that even if you meet people that you don't know, they would ask you, what is your totem? And then you say your totem. They can actually link back to say, oh, you are related to me, actually. I'm your uncle. Okay. You're my
It's
cousin or something
interesting.
like that. Yeah. So it's like everybody then gets connected to each other through those kinds of, cultural perspectives. Some people nowadays, they say, oh, it's too backward, but it had a role to play in terms of
Mm.
this Ubuntu kind of perspective, that the moment you just discuss in terms of where are you originating from, what's your totem, you say, oh,
Mm.
okay, we are related. So if you are to think of it, as the population increases and people are having these different totems, and there was this sort of like an unwritten rule that people in the same totem, they shouldn't marry each other. So what it
Mm.
means is that you're going to marry somebody from a different totem. So by the end of the day, it's like there's a very high chance that the other person that you're going to see, they are
Mm.
related to you in some way. That's why even these philosophies of saying, it takes a village to raise a child. It's like if
Mm.
you're a child, all the other adults around you, they are your parents. If
Mm.
you're a parent, all the other children around you are
Yeah.
your children.
Interesting. Yeah.
So this relational kind of thing, and that's why we're seeing concepts, collective occupations where people do things together. They make a lot of sense for us, for our culture, because it's intertwined in who we are.
Yeah, I
So
think
yeah.
what you just mentioned is also relatable to the Chinese culture. We sometimes I remember that when I talked to one of my patients that he the elderly just suffering from some kind of like a stroke or something that really disabling that, and then when I tried to approach him and then told him that you're going to be independent, we are helping you to do things
Mhm.
by yourself, and then that gentleman feel sorry about it because
Yeah,
he expected to be taken care by his
exactly.
family because this is
Exactly.
something that we expect from the Chinese culture,
Yeah.
taking care of our own family,
Yeah.
caring with each other. We talk about interdependence rather than
Yeah.
independence. Sometimes in Chinese, independence means loneliness, isolation, and then as a therapist in Hong Kong, when we practice, we talk about independence. You can do it all yourself. You can gain autonomy things, but some of our clients, they just don't want that kind of autonomy. They
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
connect because of that kind, even though they feel disabled, but they will rather taken care by the family members.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
always talk about that the value about the we have specific term like the collectivism.
Mhm.
The counter idea is the individualism, which talk
Mhm.
more about the personal right. You can talk about independence, autonomy, but collectivism means sometimes um, the goodness for the group is bigger than the individual values.
Yeah, that's very similar to
We are
our
readily, yeah, we
culture. Yeah.
readily sacrifice our own preference or our own rights for the greater group,
Mhm.
for the family or for the bigger
Mhm.
community.
Mhm.
We believe
Mhm.
that. So some even not just about Chinese, as far as I know, from even from like in Korea or Japan,
Mhm.
they prefer um to group people with disability, that they group them together and then take care by someone with specialized skill. They consider this is a dignity rather than ask them to live there on their own, do everything at home by themselves. They prefer
Mhm.
put those
Mhm.
people into a institutions so that
Mhm.
this is a better way for them
Mhm.
to live like this rather than on their own. So this is
Mhm.
a really a challenging value when we learn about
Mhm.
independence, autonomy from the Western point of view. We do
Mhm.
understand that, but
Yeah.
sometimes it will contradict with some of our traditional value as
Mhm.
well. I think
Mhm.
something similar happened maybe in your
Very
own
true.
context as well.
Very
Yeah.
true. Thanks for bringing that. So maybe as we go towards wrapping this up, now you mentioned the issue of values. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, implications for practice. We are teaching occupational science. What could you say? Maybe these are the key things for consideration when somebody is learning about occupational science. What is the key thing when it comes to occupational science knowledge generation in relation to international perspectives? I know in South America and other parts of the world, they also have their perspectives when it comes to occupational science. But just for us to wrap this up, for students, implications for learning, studying occupational science, and then being able to practice as an occupational therapist.
Yeah, I think it would be good start with the knowing part, because we understand that we know there are the option, are the possible value, possible belief available, which is I think we still get the central points, that the focus point about the importance of occupation,
Yes.
but we also have so many different types of value belief attached to that. We all agree with the importance of occupation. We all agree the importance about doing things, how that kind of doing enhance your sense of identity, your
Mhm.
well-being. We believe that this is the central. I think this is universal
Yeah.
across
Yeah.
culture.
I agree.
Even
Yeah.
within our context, we believe that doing things is important. Having some kind of engagement in our daily routine is really important. But other than that, actually, we might have some different cultural belief, cultural values that are attached to as well. And I think starting with knowing the other possibility, knowing other values is important to the student, because they are not just stick to one particular um, um, traditional or Western culture, but they know that there's something else. This is the first thing. Start with the knowing, and then I think it's also good to start with thinking about the alternative. Like when you get stuck with something, or like myself, when I find a challenge learning the traditional Chinese value, and then also the values about from the Western culture, when we come across these kind of conflicts, we're not just understand this as a conflict, but we try to like assimilate, we try to combine or integrate it, or at least respect the differences
Mhm.
between
Mhm.
different ideas, so that we can learn from each other. I think this
Yeah.
kind of openness is also
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Like what I experienced in Hong Kong, this is a really good example that we borrow different idea, even from
Mhm.
different Chinese community, different Chinese background.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
and also together with South Asia's,
Mhm.
Western Europe, and
Yeah.
all around the world, we borrow different ideas. We come together, we try to understand,
Yeah.
we try to find the common values, and then we try to bring them together. So I think
Mhm.
this is really important
Yeah.
for the student. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Gary. I think this conversation maybe it's just an initial one. We might have, who knows, we might have further conversations around
Yeah.
this, but it's coming through clearly from our discussion that, I mean, there is no dispute about the value of occupation. And this is why I think me and you were still in
Yep.
this profession. Otherwise, we would
Yep.
have left it.
Yeah,
So
that's
there
true.
is value, occupation has got the intrinsic value, and but it's about understanding the culture, where this knowledge is being applied. So it's not like there's a one size fits all kind of approach. The other point that I'm actually getting from this discussion is that knowledge generation shouldn't be just, a Western global north to global south kind of thing, but there is also knowledge being generated, in these other cultures, different cultures, internationally, global south, and that same knowledge can also be transferred, to the Western context. I know, for example, the Kawa model that was developed, by Japanese OTs, but it's being used in many other parts. So it's about looking at knowledge generation and then, seeing what is it that can work in our context, and then adopting the bits that work for our context, for the betterment of humanity. So
I always find it amazing to see that we all commonly agree with something which is important about the occupation, but we can do it in many different ways. Like we make it manifest in so diverse ways that I always find it really amazing to see all the differences and then bring it all together. And so sometimes we do enjoy that kind of like maybe in an international conference or something that we can share everything with all the OTs around the world. I think it will be really beautiful pictures. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Gary.
Yeah.
Okay, great
Thank you.
stuff.